Well, happy Monday to all of you. I am Eddie the Puerto Rican Piper, and I'm on my way home from a hard day of work. This week, at the end of the week, I have a software release that I have to hand deliver to a customer in Bethesda, Maryland. And of course, going into this week, I was panicking. Last night, I realized that I wasn't where I wanted to be in order to get this release done. So I was in a bit of a panic mode today, but luckily I've caught up. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Just right before I left to come home, I got everything in order. So, for the pipe porn, so if I don't crash while I do this, because I'm going around a curve, I am smoking my Falcon with, I believe it's an apple bowl. And this is the pipe that I was talking about that's modular. This pipe, the wood part, actually unscrews from the shaft part. And if you can see here, there's a bowl underneath the bowl. There's another bowl that actually captures all of the liquid that could create gurgling. And then, see this center part here is twirled. It's twisted, and supposedly as you draw the smoke through it, it creates a vortex, and that's supposed to help cool the smoke, as well as the construction. The material is supposed to wick the heat away from the smoke to give it a cooler smoke. And in it, I've got lane 1Q. Just generic lane 1Q today. No fireside from the local brick and mortar. I don't even think that the brick and mortar that sells the Fireside brand is anything other than an East Coast thing. I think John the Bearded Welshman would know more than me about that. So today I thought I'd regale you with a tale of a diving accident, a scuba diving accident that I partook in. Nobody but me and my best friend knew that it ever happened. So back in college in the early 90s, I got certified to be a basic open water diver through the University of Maryland. It was a credit course. As the checkout dive for this course, it was in the dead of winter. We went to a place called Bainbridge Quarry in Pennsylvania. Now, I failed to look up where exactly the quarry was in Pennsylvania before I thought about doing this story, so I apologize. I believe it's somewhere near Harrisburg, maybe a little north of Harrisburg, and maybe a little northwest of Harrisburg. Now that I think of it, I remember driving through York, so it's north of York. Anyway, this was years ago. This is probably 25, 30 years ago, so I apologize for my memory. So the features of this quarry are just the typical quarries that have been customized for sport divers. They're sunken buses, sunken airplanes, sunken outhouses. Platforms along the bottom where classes can go and sink down and do their testing things, taking off the mask and putting it back on and clearing the water out. So after the day we got checked out, this friend and I, there was snow on the ground. We had very thick wetsuits on, and after everyone successfully passed the class, we all gathered in a very small, I want to say shack by the water, and passed around a bottle of vodka. And since I was underage at the time, probably 19, I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. To have a feeling of accomplishment, I passed my certification test, and now we're all freezing our asses off, trying to get warm in this heater, surrounding this heater in the shed, passing around vodka. It's a lucky I didn't get a cold sore. So we went back several times to this quarry, just because it was where I live. It's several hours away from the ocean. I'm definitely far away from any kind of tropical water in Maryland. So these quarries were a nice source of diving experience for my friend and I. So we went back to this quarry several times. One of the features of this quarry was something called the hole. It was a shaft that went straight down. It was probably 20 feet in diameter and went down 130 feet into the ground. There was nothing at the bottom of this hole. I imagine its whole purpose was to allow people who took advanced open water courses and who had to get tested in very deep water. It allowed them to go down and test. Well, being the stupid idiots that my friend and I were, we decided, let's go down in the hole and see what's down there. Okay, so the first 50 feet was okay. We got down to about 90 feet, and it was very dark. In fact, it was pitch black. But I was right next to my friend. I knew he was there by touch and I could hear his bubbles breathing. And an interesting thing happens when you go down deep. The nitrogen in your body are little bubbles, the tiny microscopic bubbles. And as you descend, the pressure of the water also smushes all the air in your body, including any kind of bubbles. So the nitrogen in your body gets more dense, more thick. And you become drunk on this nitrogen. It's called nitrogen narcosis. And what happened is I got hit with nitrogen narcosis immediately about 90 feet. I've never been narked before, which is the slang for it. Never been narked before. And I was wondering to myself, what the hell is going on? This is weird. And adding that to the experience of being very deep and being in complete blackness, I started to get a little disoriented. And fate, as it happens, also made my regulator, which is the thing that you put in your mouth and you breathe air from the tank and then you blow out the bubbles. Also, it was so cold down there that my regulator froze in the open position. So, next thing I knew, I'm narked, and I've got a jet stream of air shooting past my mouth and out into the water. And immediately, I realized that the pressure was starting to lessen, meaning the tank was running out of air. So being narked, all the training that you go through in an emergency situation where you are out of air goes out the window. What was I supposed to do? I was supposed to grab my buddy, indicate that I was out of air, and proceed to buddy breathe, where I take a sip of air, give it to him, exhale, he takes a sip of air, as he exhales, I take a sip of air. So it's a buddy thing, we're just trading off. That's what I should have done. What I actually did was I pushed off from my buddy and proceeded to kick as quickly as I could to the surface. Because I was panicked, I was narked, and I was scared. Bad combination. So, one bad thing that can happen to a diver, if he is at a great depth and he goes to the surface very quickly, are those tiny bubbles that I talked about that are compressed at depth now start to expand. The quicker you go to the surface, the quicker the bubbles are going to expand. These bubbles can expand in very bad places. They can expand in your veins. They can expand in your brain, causing a stroke. They can expand in your lungs, causing a hemorrhage in your lungs. I was very lucky. I should have went to the surface and stayed. I should have went to the surface slowly and stopped about 15 feet below the surface and waited for about 10 minutes so I can get rid of all this excess bubbles in my system, to get my system back into normalcy, and then go to the surface. No, I shot straight to the surface. I breached the surface and said, thank God I'm alive. Why am I not dead? Because then I'm no longer narked. the realization of what just happened to me and the stupidity that the stupid act that I just did hit me like a ton of bricks. So I just lay there and I floated on the surface of the water. And about 4 minutes later, my buddy came up and of course said, "What the hell just happened?" So I told him. I was very lucky that day. I got away from, I escaped a serious consequence for doing something very stupid. And I thank God that I was not seriously hurt. My pipe went out, so I'm going to relight it. Psychologically, I guess one thing I completely forgot about, which was the most psychologically damaging part of it, was as I was rising to the surface as quickly as I could, the air in my lungs that I had kept was expanding, and it was leaking out of my mouth. I could not keep the air in my mouth. It was just coming out, even though I was trying to keep it in, which is also a very bad thing, because if you hold your breath and you're ascending, the air expanding in your lungs will pop your lungs. You don't ever go diving. So many things can go wrong. It's so dangerous. But I remember after that, the air finally stopped coming out of my lungs, I still wasn't at the surface, because I was down at 130 feet, and that's a long way down. And I remember now having to hold my breath, and hold my breath, and hold my breath, and remembering, thinking, am I going to pass out before I breach the surface? See, I already spoiled it for you, and I said I breached the surface, and I lay there. But there was a time during that ascent where I thought I was going to drown. And that really freaked me out. And for the longest time, I didn't go diving. Anyway, stupid things we do when you're young. And how you can look back and think, how did I survive? How did I get this old? Because how stupid I was when I was young. Hey, real quick, I wanted to give a serious and heartfelt shout out to John the Bearded Welshman and Johnny, the old dirty piper. John, for giving me a shout out on your show today. Really appreciate it, man. Johnny, thanks for all the advice you've been putting on my videos, methods and procedures for trying to get rid of tongue bite. Definitely going to follow them. But yeah, just once again, I wanted to say thank you to both of you. Wow, my road's coming up here. That was quick. I guess I've been going 13 and a half minutes already. Give me a second while I make a left on it. So, I think this was a long drawn out ending, which probably should have ended a couple minutes ago. Just want to share that story with you guys. Keep the pipes lit. Remember what I always say, vamos chutar.